Kemo stood at the edge of his Gambian village, the dusty paths stretching toward the horizon. Life had been hard. Small crops, small earnings, and a young family whose future seemed limited. Dreams of Europe tugged at his heart. He weighed the love for his wife, Mariama, and the son he had yet to see grow against the lure of wealth and a better life. With a final glance at the sunlit village, Kemo resolved to leave, carrying only a small bag of essentials and a heart full of hope and fear. Morning arrived in whispers. Mariama and their baby slept under a mosquito net, while Kemo packed lightly. He pressed his lips to Mariama's forehead, memorizing her face, the rhythm of her breathing. She did not cry, but her trembling hands spoke of her fear. The pickup truck rumbled into the horizon, dust trailing behind. Kemo whispered a silent prayer, promising he would return stronger, wealthier, and able to give them the life they deserved. The convoy carried Kemo across Senegal, Mali, and Niger, each border a test of patience and courage. Cracked roads and sandy tracks became relentless teachers. Nights under a vast starry sky were cold and unforgiving. Kemo's mind drifted to his son, imagining the boy growing up without him. Each mile intensified his anxiety, but sharpened his resolve. Survival became instinct, and hope remained his guiding light. The desert revealed its harshness. Days blurred into heat and endless dunes. Kemo's lips cracked, throat parched, skin scorched. Migrants fell behind, some collapsing to the sands. Nights were freezing, starlight indifferent to human suffering. Yet Kemo pressed on, driven by Mariama's memory and the hope of a promised life. The desert claimed lives silently. A young man collapsed beside Kemo, whispering prayers for water he never received. Kemo held his hand until the young man's last breath, then buried him under a small mound of sand. Each loss deepened the weight of survival, reminding him of the fragile thread between life and death. Yet Kemo persisted, every step defying despair. Crossing into Libya, hope faded into another form of despair. Migrants were corralled into camps, guarded by armed men. Hunger, fear, and forced labor became daily rituals. Kemo carried bricks under scorching sunlight, hands blistered, back aching. Nights offered no comfort, the air thick with sweat and despair. Despite this, Kemo clung to visions of home. Weeks became months. Kemo's body ached from unrelenting labor, yet survival demanded persistence. Hunger gnawed constantly. Friends collapsed beside him, some too weak to rise. Yet Kemo memorized routines, noting guards' behaviors, waiting for the chance to escape. An opportunity arrived when an overseer permitted extra work in exchange for a chance to leave the camp. Kemo endured longer days and heavier loads, counting every moment toward freedom. Finally, the Mediterranean appeared, a calm facade hiding lethal danger. Migrants were crammed into a fragile rubber boat, the night black and waves menacing. Panic whispered in every heartbeat. The small boat capsized once, tossing Kemo into cold, salt-filled chaos. He clung to debris, muscles screaming, every second a battle against death. Hours passed before rescue arrived. Exhaustion, frost, and relief intermingled. Survival had once again been won by sheer will. Kemo stepped onto European soil, exhausted but alive. The cities were cold and indifferent, streets bustling but anonymous. Without documents, he became a ghost, drifting between shelters, trains, and alleys. Every alleyway reminded him of the Sahara's cruelty. Every face in the crowd was a reminder that he was invisible. Yet hope persisted. Kemo resolved to endure, to survive, and one day to return home not empty-handed, but victorious. Kemo's days blurred into labor for survival. In Italy, he bent under the sun, picking tomatoes, fingers blistered and raw. In Paris, he scrubbed dishes, hands pruned and aching. Germany brought heavy loads on freezing streets. Each temporary job demanded silence and invisibility. Yet, through toil, he remembered Mariama and the child he had never seen. Every drop of sweat was a promise to one day return, to transform his suffering into security for the family he loved. Winter brought frost and despair. Kemo slept beneath bridges, curled into thin blankets, shivering as snow blanketed the streets. Hunger gnawed relentlessly, and loneliness pressed like stone. He whispered Mariama's name, imagining her warmth, imagining his son's laughter. Nights were long and silent, and survival became a test of endurance. Through the cold, Kemo's resolve hardened. The dream of home kept him alive, even as Europe seemed to reject him at every corner. The streets of Germany grew familiar, yet Kemo's heart remained far away, tethered to memories of his family and the life he had left behind. He had worked tirelessly for 6 years, finally securing his immigration papers and a stable job. Each month, he sent money home, trusting his father to care for Mariama and their son. But something gnawed at him. No letters, no phone calls, no signs of the house his father claimed to be building. The silence became unbearable. One night, lying awake in his modest apartment, Kemo realized that no amount of success mattered if he did not know the truth. Home called to him, not in words, but in the ache of his soul. After 6 years in Germany, Kemo finally felt he had conquered the impossible. No longer sleeping under bridges or hiding from authorities, he now had a legal permit and a stable job. Every month, he sent money home, trusting his father to provide for Mariama and their son. He believed a house was being built, a symbol of his sacrifice. Yet, letters remained unanswered, calls went unreturned. Standing under the dim lights of a German train station, suitcase in hand, Kemo made the choice to return home, unaware of the storm waiting for him. The flight from Germany to West Africa was quiet, but Kemo's heart raced with every mile. Through the airplane window, he watched clouds roll by, imagining the smile on Mariama's face, the embrace of his little boy, now 6 years old. But beneath that hope lingered a silent fear. Why had his family gone silent for so long? Kemo's heart sank when he reached the village gate. Gone were the dreams of a house rising from the soil. There was no sign of construction, only the same old family compound weathered by years of neglect. Children ran past him laughing, but no one seemed to recognize the young man who'd been gone so long. Each step toward home carried the weight of unanswered questions. Inside the compound, Kemo froze. His father was not alone. By his side stood a young woman, heavily adorned with gold bangles, her sharp gaze filled with disdain. The family home had not improved. The new wife, young enough to be Kemo's sister, had replaced his mother's place in the household. No sign of Mariama. No sign of his son. Kemo's chest tightened as he realized the truth. His father had been using his hard-earned money to live in comfort with this woman, leaving his wife and child to suffer. Across the village, Mariama's life was a shadow of what Kemo imagined. She and their son had struggled for years, surviving on scraps and the occasional help from Alieu, Kemo's childhood friend. Believing Kemo had abandoned them, Mariama had grown closer to Alieu, leaning on him for support. Eventually, love, or perhaps loneliness, took root, and she bore his child. To protect herself and her boy, she sought divorce, which the elders granted, believing Kemo lost to the world. The next day, Kemo learned everything. A village elder, unable to bear the weight of silence, told him the truth. His wife had remarried, not just to anyone, but to Alieu, his closest friend. The child Mariama now carried was not his. Kemo collapsed to his knees. The weight of betrayal and loss pressing down like a storm. Everything, his sacrifices, his dreams, lay shattered on the red earth of his homeland. Kemo could barely breathe. The wind carried the laughter of children, the chatter of neighbors, yet it all sounded like cruel mockery. Memories of Mariama's gentle smile, his son's first cry, and Alieu's promises of loyalty swirled in his mind, shattering into fragments. He clenched his fists, torn between rage and despair, whispering to himself that he had returned not for revenge, but for answers. That night, Kemo entered his father's home. The air reeked of expensive drinks and hypocrisy. His father sat lazily on a wooden chair, the young wife fanning herself nearby. Kemo demanded to know where the money had gone. 6 years of labor, sweat, and blood. His father's response was dismissive, claiming the money was his to use. Rage burned in Kemo's eyes as he realized that betrayal had begun not with Mariama, but within his own bloodline. In a small corner of the compound, Kemo found his mother, a shadow of the strong woman he remembered. Her eyes were swollen from years of crying. She confessed the truth. She had been powerless against his father's decisions, watching helplessly as Mariama and the child suffered. Kemo knelt before her, taking her frail hands, silently apologizing for the years he had missed, for the life he could not repair. The next morning, Kemo stood outside Mariama's small home. His heart pounded as he raised his hand to knock, but he hesitated, feeling like an intruder in a life that had moved on without him. Inside, Mariama held her son close, knowing the confrontation was inevitable. When the door finally opened, their eyes met, filled with pain, regret, and memories of a love lost to time and circumstance. Mariama led Kemo inside, and the truth spilled out between heavy silences. She revealed years of hardship, hunger, and hopelessness. She spoke of Alieu, not as a betrayer, but as the man who had kept her and her son alive. Her voice trembled as she admitted her pregnancy. Kemo listened, each word a dagger. Yet somewhere in his chest, a spark of understanding began to glow. Though buried under layers of hurt, Kemo found Alieu near the riverbank, the same place where they had once fished as boys and sworn brotherhood. But now, the bond was broken. Alieu met his gaze without shame, but with sorrow. He explained that his actions were born from compassion, not betrayal. Yet, the wound was deep, and forgiveness felt impossible, at least for now. That night, alone under a starlit sky, Kemo stood at the edge of the village well. His thoughts spiraled between revenge and despair. The temptation to end everything clawed at him, yet his mother's tears and his son's innocent face anchored him. He screamed into the darkness, his voice echoing across the sleeping village. A cry of anguish, but also of survival. His mother found him before dawn, wrapping her thin arms around his shoulders, whispering prayers and begging him to forgive. She told him that clinging to anger would only destroy what was left of his soul. Kemo wept in her arms like a child, the weight of 6 lost years breaking him open. Somewhere deep inside, forgiveness began to bloom, not for his father, nor for Alieu, but for himself. Days later, Kemo called a meeting with Mariama and Alieu under the village's ancient baobab tree. His voice was calm, though heavy with emotion. He chose not revenge, but reconciliation. He pledged to care for his son while blessing Mariama's new life. The village, once divided by whispers, watched in awe as forgiveness paved the path toward healing. As the sun set behind the hills, Kemo sat with his son, watching fireflies dance across the night. He realized that life's journey was not measured by suffering nor by betrayal, but by the courage to rise above them. His voice, steady now, whispered the lesson he had learned. We cannot rewrite the past, but we can choose how to face tomorrow, with love, not bitterness.
Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more great content. It really helps us out.